Okay. Well, good evening, brothers and sisters. Tonight's module is we're going to be looking at the scientific evidence of God's existence. And one of Father Spitzer's books, uh, he says that the cosmos, all those billions of galaxies, and at the submolecular level, that uh, the cosmos as a whole and instances, it's intelligible. We may not know everything about the cosmos, but uh, we can ask certain questions about how the cosmos functions, discretely or as a whole. And Spitzer's point is because the cosmos is intelligible, it's not chaotic, it's not random, it follows certain invariant patterns. Because it's intelligible and nothing exists in itself, Spitzer says that that points to the existence of God. So we can look at physical phenomena, and as the psalmist says, that all of creation uh, uh, shows the effect of God's presence on creation. Okay, so here we go. Opening
Lord,
prayer.
we thank you for giving us intelligence and curiosity. With these gifts, we've developed science to help us explore and understand the natural world. May our study lead us to know what is real and true, and so lead us to you. Amen.
This prayer, I really appreciate it because sometimes we think that faith and reason, faith and science are incompatible, but both reason and faith are gifts from God. And so science, which is an extension of reason, can't be at odds with faith because they both come from God. And so it really is a blessing that science can help us explore and understand the natural world. And that points to God. So, so looking at first blush, I guess I sort of preempted the discussion, but are science and faith opposed to one another? Why or why not? Um, I don't know if in this presentation, Father Spitzer does note that 60% of all scientists are religiously involved or have faith. And again, science is an extension of reason. Reason is a component of our soul. It's how we give meaning to our existence. So reason and faith are gifts from God, and science being an extension of reason, they shouldn't be opposed to one another because they both are grounded in God. So what do you think about that?
I just remember, I think it was Pope John Paul II who said um, that there is no conflict between faith and science.
Mhm.
That we may not understand all the pieces and how they join together and come together, but there is no conflict. Why or why not? That's just I don't know.
Yeah. And as we go further into the PowerPoint, um, the person who articulated the Big Bang Theory is a Polish priest. Um, Lament here, I think his name is. Okay, so the second question, can there be evidence of God's existence from the phenomenal world? When we look at the world, does that point to God's existence?
Yes, I would say if you look at nature, I mean, you look at us, it's evidence of God's existence because according to what the Bible teaches us,
Mm-hmm.
we've been created in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel like that itself speaks a
Hmm.
lot to this, evidence of God's existence. But I understand there are skeptics out there,
Hmm.
you know, who say, nope.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the fact that we have reflective consciousness and we can choose to promote the good of the other, we can choose to love other people, that points to our soul, which is something beyond, neurochemical process. It's beyond the physical domain. It's something uh, where we are within creation, but our soul points to the originator of our soul, which is God. The other thing that we look at the natural world, it's not random. It's like we wake up and we look up the sky and the moon is in relationship, to the earth and the solar system. It follows certain patterns. It's not like one day the earth is in its orbit, but the next day it's near Pluto. No, it has a pattern, and 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 within the Earth's orbit, within the Earth, uh, there are certain laws of nature that the different systems, biological ecosystems, they follow. Um, and each things have certain ends and purposes. So the fact that the cosmos is orderly, both at the macro level and the micro level, that it's not random, it's not chaotic, that since there's patterns and laws of nature, that points to there's a mind behind this that implanted order within the universe. Anything else? Any evidence that points to God's existence?
I think even in the human body, there's a lot of order, like when we're sleeping, our our heart continues to beat, our lungs continue to breathe, and there's a lot of things going on internally that we don't control with our mind.
Hmm.
Just it just does what it's supposed to do. So
Yeah, that's very common sense that we're very complex organisms, but we have a circulatory system, we have a lymphatic system, a digestive system, a reproductive system, a nervous system, and all these systems function for a certain purpose. And that's just within being a human being. And it's like, well, as an organism, and we function according to certain patterns in an orderly way, that suggests that there is a creator behind the orderly being of being human. We're not random, we're not chaotic, but we follow certain invariant patterns according to our nature. Yeah, good point. Okay.
We live in an age of modern scientific discoveries. This has led many people to believe that we don't need the church to help us understand the world around us. They believe that faith is not necessary nowadays. Faith is just an emotional choice. Some believe there is no possible evidence for God's existence. So belief in God only comes from faith, a feeling, and not from any real evidence.
So what is faith? It's not a feeling, it's not an emotion. It's not just kind of a wish fulfillment. We wish that there was a God. What do you think faith is?
Um, Faith is God drawing us to himself.
Mhm. Yeah. It's that experience of God drawing us to himself. Yeah. There's something, we have some kind of a inherent orientation towards the divine. It's like we have this homing device that points us towards God. and that inclination is faith. But faith is an assent. We have to give our assent to God. Aquinas described faith as the substance of what we hope for. And along what you said, Steve, what we hope for is God. And when we recognize that orientation towards God and give ourselves to it, that's faith.
How do we see faith today? Let's see an example from the movies. In Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Jones has to decide whether or not to have faith in his father's journal when it doesn't make sense to him. Watch as he questions whether faith is based on feeling or something else.
So in this film clip, Indiana Jones's father in his journal encourages Indiana Jones to go across the crevice, which is, thousands of feet. If he falls, it's would end in his demise. Okay. So how does this illustrate faith? My wife has an inscription on the wall, and it says that faith is falling through time, knowing at the end that you'll be caught. So faith is knowing that we are being upheld. So how does this clip from Indiana Jones illustrate faith?
Well, it's a trust. He seemed to be trusting that it will work when he puts his foot out. There's a trust that you will be taken care of. Perhaps it's the wrong word.
Yeah, yeah.
That it will, if you trust, it will be fine.
And in terms of empiricism, when he's on the ledge, if he goes forward, empirically, it looks like he's going to fall off the cliff. He's going to die. And so there's no rational empirical evidence to suggest that he should trust his father. But he does trust his father. He said that you will be okay if you do this. So he's going beyond empirical assurances to this trust that's based upon faith. It's knowing at the end that he will be caught. And yeah, it's a very, really cool scene. Okay.
Deacon Jim, we're not getting any audio on our end anymore.
Yeah, you're not hearing me?
We can hear you, but we can't hear any audio from the slides.
From the slides?
Correct.
Okay, right now, the slide we have right now has no audio.
Okay, terrific. Was there audio on the video clip?
Yeah.
Okay, we couldn't hear it. So.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions?
Let's see if it picks back up when it's not a video.
Okay. So the question is, so Indiana Jones is on the ledge, and his father assures him that if he crosses the chasm, he'll be safe. And so what are some of the things that could have happened when Jones took that blind leap of faith? Well,
He could have died.
he could have died. Yeah, it could have been negative consequences. Uh, and so what could he have done to prevent his demise from happening? What would have been the safe thing to do?
Go
Turn
back.
Yeah, to stay where he is,
Turn back.
not to go forward. And sometimes in our relationship with God, we're being asked to move forward, even though we're not quite sure how the outcomes are going to end up. It's not like we have these concrete assurances that everything is going to work out okay in the short term, but we trust that if we're following God, that in the end, all things will work to his purposes. Um, okay. So if we live according to faith and not our own egoic impulses, what are we basically saying when we live by faith? If we say that, Lord, I trust you, I trust your providential will. I, I have a sense of what you want me to do here and now, and I am going to follow your will. What are we basically saying when we make that assurance, when we offer that assurance or that commitment to God?
Well, I guess that God's in control and that He's good and He's going to be there for us.
Yeah, that he's good, he's in control, and he's there for us. Yeah,
And,
that's yeah.
and thy will be done.
That's basically,
Mhm.
we are, God has created us with a soul so that we can order our lives towards God. And to order our lives towards God means what you said, Teresa, we strive to do God's will. So basically, along the lines what you both have said, we're in faith, we are tacitly saying that my life is about God. It's not about myself. My life is about God. God's the center of my life, and he is in control.
That's my mom used to always say, we walk by faith and not by sight.
Yeah, from St. Paul. Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll pick up
Unlike
the
Indiana Jones, Catholics understand that faith is not blind. Faith is not just a feeling. We think that what we believe should make sense. Faith can be reasonable.
Did you hear that, Teresa?
We heard it's back to being kind of muted though,
Okay.
but it's audible.
Okay. So what do Catholics believe about faith? Well, it's one of the cardinal virtues, right? Faith, hope, and charity. And so they all come from God. So faith is a gift that we have to give our assent to. God offers the gift of faith, but we have to give our assent to it. And as Paul says, that our faith will justify us. It's our faith in Christ that will save us. And so it's really a necessary condition for salvation. Okay.
So the question is it reasonable to believe that God exists? Let's find out.
Okay.
There are many reasons for believing that God exists. In this presentation, we're looking at the best scientific evidence. In the next presentation, we'll look at proofs for the existence of God that come from philosophy. Science actually provides many kinds of evidence for the existence of God. Did you know about 60% of scientists either believe in God or are open to God's existence? Let's see why.
Okay.
Albert Einstein, the father of general relativity, is probably the most famous scientist who ever lived. He once said, "The more I study science, the more I believe in God." It was scientific evidence that led Einstein to believe in God. What was that evidence, and why did it lead him to believe that God exists?
That's an interesting question. It was scientific evidence that led Einstein to believe in God.
Before 1927, there was no evidence to indicate whether or not the universe had a beginning. But then a Belgian priest and physicist named Father Georges Lemaitre proposed the Big Bang Theory.
Okay, so it's a Belgian priest, Father Lemaitre. And his theory shows that the universe had a beginning.
His theory answered a question that astronomers couldn't answer. The question was, why is it the further away a galaxy is from us, the faster it is moving away?
So if, at first blush, what does that show? That with these new telescopes, the Hubble telescope and the Webb telescope, that the further away the galaxies are from us, they're moving faster away from us. That they're moving away from us. So what does that show? What does that suggest? That's kind of the part of the component of the Big Bang Theory.
It's expanding.
It's expanding and has a beginning from a certain source. So as it's expanding, the further, that's why it increases its speed, the further away it's from us.
Father Lemaitre's Big Bang Theory states that galaxies are not moving through empty space. Instead, the space between them is stretching.
Deacon Jim,
Yeah.
the sound is still soft on the slides. Is there possible, on the bottom of each slide, they have the volume control to turn that up to the maximum because it's still sounding pretty faint. At least for me it is.
Yeah.
Same here.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's on max on the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
So I will try to repeat what they've said. Okay. Sorry about this.
Imagine a polka-dotted balloon. As you inflate the balloon, the space between the dots will stretch and the dots will move further apart. Thanks to the Big Bang, the space between galaxies is expanding just like the space between the dots on the balloon.
So his point is with a balloon with the dots, as you blow up the balloon, as it expands, the space between the dots or the galaxies, there's separation, pointing to an expanding universe.
Father Lemaitre's calculations gave Einstein the information he needed for his theory of general relativity to work. Eventually, this information also led Einstein to accept that the universe had a beginning. Let's see how.
So it's with Father Lemaitre's theory of the Big Bang, according to this, that bolstered Einstein's theory of relativity. Well, I have no handout for you.
By looking at scientists have recently calculated backwards to figure out when the universe began, kind of like releasing the tension on a rubber band or letting the air out of a balloon. The calculations determined that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old.
Does anybody have any idea how they could figure that out?
Nope.
Okay, so we'll take their word for it.
Over the years, scientists have discovered several different kinds of evidence that confirm the Big Bang. The first discovery came in 1929. An astronomer named Edwin Hubble observed that the light coming from distant galaxies is stretched out or redshifted more than the light coming from closer ones. This means that distant galaxies are moving away from us more quickly.
Let's let Stephen Hawking explain.
My goal has always been simple, to work out how the universe works and why it exists at all. Luckily, there are clues everywhere, and the most important one is right above our heads.
Examine any patch of the night sky, even one as small as the head of a pin, and this is what you'll find. A tiny part of the vast web of galaxies. It's less than a millionth of what we can see of the cosmos from our little planet. Even this tiny sample is enough to find the clue, the key to the past, the present, and perhaps the future too. The clue is that seen from Earth, all these distant galaxies are slightly red in color. They appear almost as if we were looking through rose-tinted glasses. It's this very redness that reveals how the universe was born. And to show you why, I needed a straight road and a noisy car. Listen to the sound as it passes by. As the car approaches, the pitch of its engine rises. As it goes away, the pitch of its engine falls. This phenomenon is called a Doppler shift. Exact same thing happens with light.
Sorry.
Let's let Stephen Hawking explain.
I was futzing with the sound. Sorry.
Everywhere, and the most important one is right above our heads.
Examine any patch of the night sky, even one as small as the head of a pin, and this is what you'll find. A tiny part of the vast web of galaxies. It's less than a millionth of what we can see of the cosmos from our little planet. Even this tiny sample is enough to find the clue, the key to the past, the present, and perhaps the future too. The clue is that seen from Earth, all these distant galaxies are slightly red in color. They appear almost as if we were looking through rose-tinted glasses. It's this very redness that reveals how the universe was born. And to show you why, I needed a straight road and a noisy car. Listen to the sound as it passes by. As the car approaches, the pitch of its engine rises. As it goes away, the pitch of its engine falls. This phenomenon is called a Doppler shift, and the exact same thing happens with light. If our eyes were more sensitive to color, we can see that the car is actually very slightly blue as it approaches, and very slightly red as it goes away. The same rules apply in space. All distant galaxies are slightly red in color. So by the exact same piece of basic physics, they must all be moving away too. In fact, the whole universe is expanding in all directions, getting bigger and bigger, like a balloon inflating. It sounds strange, but to cosmologists, it's like winning the lottery. Because to work out where the universe came from, all we need to do is to stop time and make it run in reverse. Rewind far enough, and everything gets closer together. All the galaxies, in fact, every single thing, converges to a single point, the start of everything, 13.7 billion years ago. So it's quite simple, really. Follow the clues, and we can deduce that a very long time ago, the universe simply burst into existence, an event called the Big Bang.
Okay, could you hear that? What, you hear that? Okay, so I don't know what you call this discipline, that when objects are moving towards us, it will be blue. And as objects are moving away, it would be red. If you could. So if that's a basic principle of physics, and we look in the galaxy and the stars that are far from us, I mean, galaxies, they are red, which suggests that they're moving away. And that confirms the notion of an ever expanding universe.
Well, another astronomer said that that it may be because they're just so far away, it's red, but not that it's expanding. So, you know,
But why would they be red and not blue?
because they're so far away. That's
I-
what one astronomer
Yeah,
poses. Yeah.
okay, well, I'm trying to understand that. So it would, if the law of physics would say as something is moving away, it's red. If it's moving towards it, it's blue. If that's the law of physics, then the fact that those galaxies we see are red, I don't see how that would you say that they are just farther away because that's why they're red?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it all, but
Yeah. Because they seem like they could be blue just as well. Yeah. So then if you reverse this process, the ever expanding universe, since it's expanding and it's moving faster and faster away, then if you reverse it, according to Lemaitre, that gets you to an elemental particle or energy source, that the universe has a beginning. And since nothing creates itself, nothing is self-created, but depends upon its existence from something else, then it raises the question, well, where did that elemental particle come from that started this whole thing? And that points to an originator, a creator.
A second kind of evidence for the Big Bang was discovered in 1965. Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson noticed a strange hiss. The hiss was radiating in nearly equal amounts from everywhere in the universe they scanned. They eventually realized the hiss could only be caused by an incredible burst of energy coming from a single place at the beginning of time. This hiss was in fact heat from the Big Bang, something called cosmic microwave background radiation, which their instruments had picked up as a hiss.
So as we look at this microwave technology, they've picked up a hiss within the cosmos. Okay. And they say this hiss is an energy in which the cosmos is expanding. All right. But what I don't get at first blush is why would this hiss point to a beginning? I mean, it seems like you said, well, this microwave energy, we can pick up the sound of the energy, but why does that point to a beginning? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Now, listen carefully to the Big Bang.
In 1965, researchers at Bell Telephone Laboratories had built a powerful listening station to hear signals from the first of America's communication satellites. But they were distracted by an ultra-low frequency hiss from everywhere in the sky. What they were picking up was energy from the bright flash that started the universe, an echo of the Big Bang itself.
So what they're postulating is they're picking up the hiss, this energy that originated when the cosmos first expanded.
There's a third kind of evidence for the Big Bang. It's found in the very slight variation in the amount of matter spread across the universe very early in its history. The most recent evidence of this was collected by the Planck Space Observatory in 2013.
Let's watch how its image was made.
Okay. Anybody understand that?
No way.
No, no.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting the Big Bang, and I'm getting, it's expanding. That, if it's expanding, it has a beginning. I get that. And I kind of see the hiss, the cosmic hiss coming from an energy source that points to the beginning. But I did not understand this, uh, uh, the even distribution of matter in the early universe. I don't see what point they're trying to make.
I have a question about the hiss sound.
Okay.
Does that mean over time it increases or decreases, or is it always there?
I don't know.
I mean, intensity wise or volume wise?
Yeah, it seemed like it's a constant. They're picking up this cosmic sound, this hiss coming from an energy source, and they postulate that it has that this energy has a source at the beginning of creation. So in other words, the universe is not just matter floating in the cosmos, that there's energy that connects these particles together. And there's energy that keeps galaxies together. And there's energy that keeps the whole cosmos together. And this energy, where this come from, what makes sense with the Big Bang starting from elemental particle or energy source that when it exploded and expanded, it left a sound. And that's the hiss.
So far, we've given evidence for the Big Bang, but what about God? Is there any evidence that the universe was created? There is, and we'll look at some in a minute, but the Big Bang is only one step in showing that the universe needs a creator. While the Big Bang is evidence for the expansion of the universe, it only suggests that the universe had a beginning and requires a creator.
Okay, so what we have thus far is the Big Bang Theory establishes a beginning. That explains why the cosmos is expanding. And the further away that galaxies are, they're speeding up. Okay, so that points to a beginning. But that doesn't necessarily establish the existence of God.
Before we get to evidence for God, let's look at some of the reasons given for the universe not having a beginning.
Keep in mind that being human, scientists can sometimes let their personal beliefs about God, religion, and science interfere with their search for truth. Even Einstein altered his general theory of relativity to keep the universe from needing a beginning. He didn't alter it based on any evidence, but because he personally assumed that the universe always existed. However, once he saw Father Lemaitre's evidence for the Big Bang, he changed his theory. Giving up his personal beliefs in the face of the truth is one of the reasons Einstein is considered a great scientist. Now let's look at the most common reasons given for the universe not needing a creator.
So Einstein made a shift. In his early days, he believed that the universe simply exists. It's just there. But with his theory of relativity and Lemaitre's theory of the Big Bang, he was convinced that the universe had a beginning, that it started from somewhere. And that eventually pointed to a creator, because that elemental particle or elemental energy source, just to say that it's just there, it just exists, the question is, well, why does it exist? Because nothing is self-created. Why does that exist? And for Einstein, it led to a belief of a creator who brought that elemental particle into being.
There are four main reasons given for how the universe could exist without being created. Basically, these involve looking for ways to explain how the universe didn't have a beginning at the Big Bang. First, it has been speculated that there might be an eternal multiverse, continually producing bubble universes. In this speculation, our universe is one of these bubble universes.
So our universe contains billions of galaxies, and each galaxy contains billions of stars. The bubble universe theory is that we're just one among many universes. This is a postulation. We can show galaxies, but a bubble universe, a multiplicity of universes, we can't really. It's a postulation, a hypothesis.
Another idea is that the universe is in a continual cycle of big bangs where the universe expands and big crunches where the universe collapses. In this speculation, our universe happens to be in the expansion part of this ongoing cycle.
So the rationale behind that is expansion, contraction. We're in expansion mode, and since it's going to contract, then doesn't necessarily postulate a beginning. Okay.
A third speculation is that the universe always existed, but it just didn't expand before the Big Bang.
So that would be going back to the original elemental particle energy, that it simply exists. That and that's kind of I don't know, that's a thesis that can't be confirmed by evidence. You're just simply making a statement. It simply is. So it's kind of like act of faith, I guess.
Finally, some hypothesize that universes can exist with unusually complex physics, such as having up to 11 dimensions that would permit all sorts of expanding and bouncing universes. None of these speculative universes they claim would require a creator. But is that really true?
In 2003, three of the most prominent physicists in the world developed a proof together. The physicists were Arvind Borda of UC Santa Barbara Alexander Vilenkin of Tufts University near Boston, and Alan Guth of MIT. Their proof demonstrated that any universe that is expanding has to have a beginning.
So that's a postulation that any universe that is expanding means of necessity that it has a beginning.
This proof, called the BVG proof for short, shows that our universe and any universe we can imagine would need to be expanding at a rate greater than zero, and therefore it would need to have a beginning. That goes for multiverses, bouncing universes, 11 dimension string theory universes, you name it. Here's how Dr. Vilenkin explained it.
It is said that a good argument will convince a reasonable man, and that a proof will convince an unreasonable man. Now that the BVG proof is in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They must confront the problem of a beginning.
So if the cosmos was static and galaxies weren't moving away, then one could reasonably postulate that the universe simply is. But since the universe is expanding, that in itself shows that it has a beginning. If it has a beginning, it was that requires some being to initiate the process of bringing into existence.
A second kind of evidence for our universe having a beginning is entropy. It's also known as the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy is one of the most fundamental laws of physics. Most physicists, including Einstein, believe it can never be disproved. Entropy means that every physical system, including our universe or any potential multiverse, will eventually run down like a wind-up toy until it can do nothing. Because of entropy, if our universe or any other kind of universe always existed, it would have completely run out of usable energy by now and be unable to do anything. Our universe, though, is still full of usable energy, so it must have existed for a limited amount of time. Based on this evidence from entropy, plus the evidence from the BVG proof, it seems clear that any universe or multiverse must have a beginning.
Anybody understand that? So the law of thermodynamics of entropy says that if the universe always existed, it would run out of energy. It hasn't run out of energy. There's energy throughout the cosmos. So our universe still has energy, and so it must have a beginning. But why is that the case? Why does the fact that the cosmos still has energy, why does that point to a beginning?
Would it have to do with the age of the universe?
The age? So the cosmos is was it 11.7 billion years?
13.8 billion.
Yeah, 13.8 billion. Okay. All right. So if it just existed, then you'd have a sort of a limited source of energy that would dissipate and the cosmos would run out of energy. Okay. So the cosmos hasn't run out of energy, still expanding, which points to a beginning in which this whole energy started from a big bang. I guess that's the explanation.
What would be interesting to know, though, is if the energy that is being produced is declining as it goes on, or whether it's staying the same. Because entropy is saying that eventually it will extinguish, it will stop. So there has to be some kind of measurement where, and I don't understand all that, of course, where you could see whether in fact the energy is at the same level as it was, let's say, 50 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
but perhaps, we dealing in billions of years, so
Yeah.
yeah, we can't measure it. But because if we're going towards an end, then you would think that eventually the energy would decline.
But it's not. But it's
But
not. Yeah.
yeah.
One way, maybe, okay, I'm introducing a theological notion here, but St. Paul says that this, that Christ is through the word that brings everything into existence, and he sustains it through the power of his spirit. So what scientists call energy, we call the spirit. And so maybe it's Christ who's intentionally bringing everything into being, sustains it through the power of the Spirit. That being the case, it's never going to come to an end. Because why would God create something and then have it being diminished? So while some worlds have a beginning, a middle, and end, that creation as a whole, once it has been brought into existence, I don't think the cosmos is going to end. And it's because it's sustained by the spirit, or which scientists call energy.
We've seen that the universe is expanding from the Big Bang, and we've seen that it must have a beginning from the BVG proof and from entropy. Now we must ask what or who caused the universe. Cosmologists have determined that time, space, matter, and energy all had their beginning with the universe. Nothing physical existed before the Big Bang. But what is nothing?
So time, matter, and energy all came into existence after the Big Bang. Nothing physical existed, prior to the Big Bang happening. Okay. So with the Big Bang, the idea that creation could come into existence, it's either from a creator or it's from nothing. Since it has a beginning, it had to have a source. So the source is either God or it's nothing. But the only thing that's going to come from nothing is nothing. So if that's the two choices, the cosmos began from nothing or it began from someone. It seems like those are the two choices.
Anytime scientists have tried to explain how the universe came from nothing, their nothing always turns into something. Even physicist Stephen Hawking made this mistake. He wrote that the universe could create itself from nothing because of the law of gravity. But the law of gravity is actually something that did not exist before the Big Bang.
So that's an interesting theory that the universe created itself from nothing because of the law of gravity. Well, the law of gravity is something, it's not nothing. So, you know, so the law of gravity is an outcome of material objects, relating, connecting towards each other.
What can we conclude from the evidence from the Big Bang, the BVG proof, and entropy? First, it is very likely that our universe, and any other possible universe, had a beginning. And second, something can't come from nothing because nothing can only do nothing. So the universe came from something outside of time, space, matter, and energy.
This
Well,
seems like a
you
pretty
know,
good argument. What do you think?
well, not exactly. I don't know, there was some experiment that I heard about. They had a vacuum for a long time, and something came about in the vacuum. I don't know how that.
Mm,
I just heard about that.
mm. Well, is that another word for nothing? So it's so the Big Bang does point to a beginning. at least the elemental particle, elemental energy. And that elemental particle that can't come from nothing. So the elemental particle had to come from something else. And people of faith would call that God. Vacuum, I don't think, addresses that because vacuum seems to be nothing.
This brings us to something like God, as the following video explains.
Does God exist? Or is the material universe all that is, or ever was, or ever will be? One approach to answering this question is the cosmological argument. It goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Is the first premise true? Let's consider. Believing that something can pop into existence without a cause is more of a stretch than believing in magic. At least with magic, you've got a hat and a magician. And if something can come into being from nothing, then why don't we see this happening all the time? No, everyday experience and scientific evidence confirm our first premise. If something begins to exist, it must have a cause. But what about our second premise? Did the universe begin, or has it always existed? Atheists have typically said that the universe has been here forever. The universe is just there, and that's all. First, let's consider the second law of thermodynamics. It tells us the universe is slowly running out of usable energy, and that's the point. If the universe had been here forever, it would have run out of usable energy by now. The second law points us to a universe that has a definite beginning. This is further confirmed by a series of remarkable scientific discoveries. In 1915, Albert Einstein presented his general theory of relativity. This allowed us, for the first time, to talk meaningfully about the past history of the universe. Next, Alexander Friedmann and George Lemaitre, each working with Einstein's equations, predicted that the universe is expanding. Then in 1929, Edwin Hubble measured the red shift in light from distant galaxies. This empirical evidence confirmed not only that the universe is expanding, but that it sprang into being from a single point in the finite past. It was a monumental discovery, almost beyond comprehension. However, not everyone is fond of a finite universe, so it wasn't long before alternative models popped into existence. But one by one, these models failed to stand the test of time. More recently, three leading cosmologists, Alvin Board, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin, proved that any universe which has on average been expanding throughout its history cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. This even applies to the multiverse, if there is such a thing. This means that scientists can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Any adequate model must have a beginning, just like the standard model. It's quite plausible then that both premises of the argument are true. This means that the conclusion is also true. The universe has a cause. And since the universe can't cause itself, its cause must be beyond the space-time universe. It must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, and unimaginably powerful, much like God. The cosmological argument shows that, in fact, it is quite reasonable to believe that God does exist.
What do you think of that argument, the cosmological argument?
Was easier to understand than the other ones.
Yeah, yes. Well, you start with the first premise. everything in the universe has a cause. Nothing is self-created. Everything in the universe is an effect that has a cause. That's true with every galaxy, and there's billions of galaxies. It's true of every star within billions of stars within the galaxy. It's true at the submolecular level. That's the basic principle. Every entity has a cause. It's an effect of a cause. Nothing is self-created. So once you accept that, so then you go, and then the Big Bang theory posits a beginning, and with that thing about light, galaxies farther away expanding are red. So that points to a beginning. So then you get to an elemental particle or elemental energy, and you say, well, everything in the cosmos is an effect except this elemental particle. That doesn't sound reasonable because you make an exception. I mean, it's like you have something to the like 123rd degree squared. You say everything in the cosmos has a cause except for the elemental particle. No, what's reasonable is that it was brought into existence something that's immaterial, it's beyond time, that's spiritual, and it's all powerful. So yeah, okay.
We just saw that entropy is evidence for the beginning of the universe, but it also happens to be evidence that the universe needed an intelligent creator. Why? Because of how unbelievably precise it had to be.
Okay, so what we're moving towards here is the laws of nature are invariant. There's patterns within the universe, and they are precise, not accidental.
If entropy had been just slightly higher at the Big Bang, the universe would have been almost dead from the start, unable to sustain any kind of life. What are the odds of that?
Physicist Roger Penrose calculated the odds of our universe having the very low entropy it does as 1 in 10 to the 10th to the 123rd power. What does that number mean? Since 10 to the 10th power is 10 billion, then 10 to the 10th to the 123rd power is 10 billion multiplied by itself 123 times. This number is so large that if every zero in it were printed in 10-point type, our solar system could not hold the paper it was printed on.
Okay. So the level of energy has to be such that it is to sustain the cosmos. If it was anything less than that, it wouldn't. The chance of that is this figure here, 10 to the 10th power 123 squared. And that's an unreasonable postulation to just be, chance that it happened.
In other words, the odds of our universe having the very low entropy it does by pure chance are so small, it would only happen one time out of that astronomically large number of universes. Of course, it could happen by pure chance, but based on those odds, Dr. Penrose doesn't think it would. He said, this tells us how precise the Creator's aim must have been, an accuracy of 1 part in 10 to the 10th to the 123rd power.
Another way of describing the odds of our universe having the very low entropy it does is comparing it to the odds of a monkey typing the complete works of Shakespeare by randomly typing on the keys in a single try. In other words, don't count on it.
Low entropy at the beginning of the universe is just one kind of evidence for what physicists call the fine-tuning of the universe for life.
So it's not just entropy, but the universe is so orderly, following laws of physics. And just within our solar system, if the moon was closer or farther away, we wouldn't have the life on Earth wouldn't be sustained. And so everything is really precisely in order. And to say, well, it's precisely ordered because of random chance. Well, that's really unreasonable because if the solar system is ordered in a very orderly fashion, and the Milky Way is ordered in the same fashion, and all those billions of galaxies are ordered, to say the whole cosmos has come about by random chance, that's as if saying if you put a room full of infinite number of monkeys, eventually one of them is going to come up with complete works of Shakespeare. And that's just unreasonable. So this question, the cosmos, our solar system, the Milky Way, the cosmos, it is finely tuned. It is ordered. It follows the patterns of physical laws. And if it was out of kilter, just within our own solar system, within our Earth, we wouldn't survive. But we do. We do because it's fine-tuned. It's orderly. And if it's orderly, that suggests that there is a mind that intentionally brought it to existence, that it would be able to be sustained.
Some of these fine-tuned conditions and constants in the universe are so unbelievably precise that a change of less than a millionth of 1% would be disastrous for life. Let's review a couple of them.
The pull of gravity, or what's called the gravitational constant, determines how strongly physical bodies are attracted to one another. If it were slightly weaker, then galaxies wouldn't have formed. But if it were slightly stronger, there would have been no Big Bang.
Here's another example. The element carbon is an essential building block of life. Fred Hoyle and William Fowler discovered the exceedingly high improbability of 4 chemical elements all having the precise values needed to allow for both carbon abundance and carbon bonding, which is necessary for life. In other words, change the value slightly on just one of these elements, and carbon either becomes much more scarce in the universe or it becomes incapable of supporting life. In the words of Fred Hoyle, a common sense interpretation of the fact suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as with chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces we're speaking about in nature.
To illustrate his point, Hoyle went on to say, imagine a junkyard contains all the bits and pieces of a Boeing 747, dismembered and in disarray. A whirlwind happens to blow through the yard. What is the chance that a fully assembled 747 ready to fly will be found standing there?
Not everyone agrees. To avoid the need for a creator to explain the fine-tuning of the universe, some physicists have resorted, once again, to a multiverse. They argue that if there are trillions and trillions of universes, each with different conditions, one of them is likely by pure chance to be suited for life, and we just happen to live in that one.
That is kind of like if you put a infinite number of monkeys in a room, one of them will come up with a great works of Shakespeare.
Well, do you remember how a multiverse was supposed to keep the universe from needing a beginning? But then the BVG proof showed that even a multiverse itself would need a beginning. It's the same story with fine-tuning. It turns out that a multiverse would also require fine-tuning to prevent its bubble universes from interfering with one another and making life impossible. So a multiverse only moves the need for fine-tuning back one step. We'd have to ask, what caused the fine-tuning of the multiverse? And that brings us to our final point. How do we answer the question of what caused the fine-tuning of our universe? If not random chance, then what or who? Many physicists, like Fred Hoyle, believe that only a super-calculating super intellect like God could cause the universe.
Besides, isn't a single intelligent creator much more likely than trillions and trillions of universes? Science typically uses a philosophical principle known as Occam's razor. It says that when faced with 2 possible explanations, the simpler of the 2 is most likely to be true.
That really is a good principle, and a basic philosophical premise that the simple explanation is probably true.
Here's a short video summarizing the evidence we've presented.
From galaxies and stars down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life. Or consider the expansion rate of the universe. This is driven by the cosmological constant. A change in its value by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 120th parts would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In either case, the universe would again be life prohibiting. Or another example of fine-tuning. If the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to an incomprehensible precision of 1 part in 10 to the 10 to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. The fact is, our universe permits physical, interactive life only because these, and many other numbers, have been independently and exquisitely balanced on a razor's edge. Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely. What is the best explanation for this astounding phenomenon? There are 3 live options. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Which of these options is the most plausible? According to this alternative, the universe must be life-permitting. The precise values of these constants and quantities could not be otherwise. But is this plausible? Is a life-prohibiting universe impossible? Far from it. It's not only possible, it's far more likely than a life-permitting universe. The constants and quantities are not determined by the laws of nature. There's no reason or evidence suggests that fine-tuning is necessary. How about chance? Did we just get really, 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 really lucky? No. The probabilities involved are so ridiculously remote as to put the fine-tuning well beyond the reach of chance. So, in an effort to keep this option alive, some have gone beyond empirical science and opted for a more speculative approach, known as the multiverse. They imagine a universe generator that cranks out such a vast number of universes that odds are life-permitting universes will eventually pop out. However, there's no scientific evidence for the existence of this multiverse. It cannot be detected, observed, measured, or proved. And the universe generator itself would require an enormous amount of fine-tuning. Furthermore, small patches of order are far more probable than big ones. So the most probable observable universe would be a small one, inhabited by a single, simple observer. But what we actually observe is the very thing that we should least expect: a vast, spectacularly complex, highly ordered universe.
inhabited by billions of other observers. So even if the multiverse existed, which is a moot point, it wouldn't do anything to explain the fine-tuning. Given the implausibility of physical necessity or chance, the best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned for life may very well be it was designed that way. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a superintellect monkeyed with physics and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. There is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge.
When we add up the evidence for the Big Bang, the BVG proof, entropy, and the fine-tuning of the universe, they overwhelmingly imply that our universe was caused by an intelligent, creative force beyond our physical reality, something or someone like God.
Watch one of the world's leading scientists, Francis Collins, explain how he reached this same conclusion.
Francis, does the theory of evolution, which everyone should accept, does it require biologists to be agnostics or atheists if they are to have a coherent worldview?
Obviously, this is a fundamental question for anybody who's aware of what's happening in biology. Certainly, evolution as a way of explaining the relatedness of living things is no longer in question. The data, somewhat from the fossil record, but more recently from the study of DNA, is incontrovertible. You can't look at that evidence and not conclude that living things, including ourselves, are all related by descent from a common ancestor. So that's the facts. What does that say about whether or not God was involved? It says nothing at all. It says this was the means by which creation occurred. But did God have a hand in starting that process? I believe he did. And I believe that basically this choice between atheism and agnosticism and belief is influenced in a certain way. Perhaps it limits the number of kinds of alternatives, but it in no way forces one into one of those boxes. And certainly science is about the natural world. If God has any meaning, God is outside the natural world, at least in part. And so science really can't comment upon whether or not God exists, for which reason I think atheism is the least logical of the choices. Left then between agnosticism and belief, one's decision ultimately comes down not from the study of evolution or any other branch of science, but from other aspects of trying to decide, is it reasonable that there is a God, and if so, that he cares about you and me? I've come to the conclusion that it's more reasonable to say that than to say, I don't know, or that I know he's not there.
Some would say that the more we understand the mechanistic processes from biology and then chemistry and then physics and then fundamental theory beneath that, that you have a hierarchy of relationships, of causal relationships that leaves no room for God. There's no room for some intervention in this process because it all flows so naturally.
So, Robert, I think the things that science has taught us have perhaps made us more and more clear that the kind of God we should not embrace is a God of the gaps. That we ought not to identify things that we can't quite yet understand in the natural world and say, oh, that must be where God is. Right. Those are not places that we ought to try to box God in. But having said all of that, there are fundamental questions about not the how, but the why that science is powerless to answer. And we are still left with this question about why is there something instead of nothing? And how did the universe begin, given that I don't think matter has been seen to create itself in the same way that we understood happened 13.7 billion years ago. And we have the fine tuning of the universe to try to understand why is it that all of these constants have exactly the value that they do to make it possible for coalescence of matter and life itself to occur. So there's plenty of room there to postulate a need for God if one is open to that idea.
Lord, the scientific evidence for your existence is powerful. Help us remain open to it and give us the courage to share it with others so that they may be open to your presence too. Amen.
Okay, there's some.
Lord, the scientific evidence for your existence is powerful. Help us remain open to it and give us the courage to share it with others so that they may be open to your presence too. Amen.
All right. Well, there's some kind of heavy duty lifting tonight. Next week, we'll be looking at the Aquinas' 5 proofs of the existence of God, which are, I think, are maybe not as opaque as tonight, but very compelling. And any reactions to what you've heard tonight regarding the scientific evidence?
It's, to me, it's almost like irrefutable. It's just so evident. But like Cheryl said, there are skeptics out there and people who still don't believe. But
Yeah, I think what this does, it confirms the faith that we already do have. And for someone like Einstein, it was his scientific inquiry that led him to God. But getting back what you said, Teresa, is like the theory, the fine tuning of the universe. There's these laws of physical laws of dynamics. They're so precise that suggest that there's a mind behind these principles that give rise to life. And it's not just the fine tuning of the universe, but there's so many compelling reasons that we've gone over that you go back to Occam's razor. What's the best? Because we have a choice. Why does the cosmos exist or not? The cosmos doesn't have to exist. There's no logical necessity of why the cosmos exists, but it does. The question is, why does it exist? And with Occam's razor, the best explanation is the simpler explanation. And it really does explain why there's order and why it exists from beginning and had to be some outside source that's immaterial, beyond time, that's spiritual, that brought everything into existence. That's the simplest, and for people of faith, it's the best explanation of why the world exists.
Well, to say that it should be reasonable that God exists doesn't prove that God exists. We just don't really know, but we have faith.
Yeah.
That's.
Well, faith is a way of knowing. Faith is, like Aquinas, is the substance of what we hope for. And so what did you say in the beginning, Steve? Could you repeat that?
Well, just because it seems like it's reasonable to assume that this was all designed and that there's God doesn't prove that God exists or that it was designed.
Yeah. Well, if it's reasonable and the other explanations are implausible, can't be proven, can't be shown, then it seems that this is the best explanation. But yeah, point well taken. Okay, folks. Thank you for your participation, and we'll hope to see you next week. And Now, I had turned my microphone towards it. Teresa, did the sound get better as we went along?
It
Yeah.
did.
Yes.
Yeah, what I did is I have a microphone here and I turned it towards it. So, okay. So these sessions, scientific evidence for the existence of God. Next time we have the Aquinas's metaphysical arguments for the existence of God. Then after this sort of heavy lifting, the fourth session is going to be on the historicity of Jesus and proof for the resurrection using the Shroud of Turin. Then we're going to be looking at how is true happiness acquired. Another topic is why be Catholic? And the final one is why does God permit suffering? So, but I do hope that this is a benefit for you tonight. Okay, so take care, blessings, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Deacon.
Thank you, Deacon.
Night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Teresa. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Deacon.